On the phone line with us right now, Carolyn Edgar. How you doing, Carolyn?
I'm doing well. How are you, Mr. Baisden?
I'm wonderful. Attorney and blogger. George, you will not believe her story.
Oh, wow. Let me hear it.
She had to represent herself in her divorce. It was so expensive. How did that happen, Carolyn?
Well, it ties perfectly into the theme of the cost of divorce being higher than you think.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what happened was I was in a very strongly contested divorce and got to a point where after paying my attorney's fees for several months, my ex-husband's attorney's fees, the cost of various professionals who had to be involved in the case because every issue was being contested, I got to a point where I literally ran out of money.
Wow.
How do you go on after that? I mean, you figure, okay, I've got to do this myself now with all these experts who've been called in. Do people really understand how deep this can get when they get married in the first place?
I don't think they do. I had no idea what the laws were in New York about getting divorced when I got married, and I really didn't think I needed to know because I wasn't planning on getting divorced.
How about that?
But when things started breaking down and it became apparent that the marriage was over, I consulted with an attorney, and my mind was blown. I got divorced at a time before New York had no-fault laws. So when I got divorced, New York was the only state in the union where you actually had to assert that someone had done something wrong. Fortunately, in 2010, those laws changed, and you can now get no-fault divorce in New York, but it makes it even more expensive and difficult in a fault-contested divorce because you have to actually prove that someone did something to allow the court to grant the divorce.
We're talking to Carolyn Edgar, attorney and blogger, about the emotional cost of divorce. I mean, obviously, being a divorce attorney, you've been through it yourself, and you're seeing walking men and women through this. What is the most devastating aspect of it?
I think it's whether you want to end the marriage or not, there's a sense of loss.
Right.
There's a sense of how could things have gone wrong. Everyone goes into a marriage with the best of intentions. It's a beautiful day. You've got your family and friends surrounding you. Everything is just so filled with love and light, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation that you really never thought you would be in. And so even when you know it's the right thing to do, and both parties know it's the right thing to do, there's a profound sense of loss and disappointment, and often that hurt and that disappointment turns into negative behavior.
Yeah, because it gets ugly.
Resentment.
And resentment. And anger. So where does the anger come from? When you're talking to your clients, obviously you're trying to take care of the business of divorce, but that's hard without the emotions.
It's very hard without the emotion. And the anger comes in because over the course of a relationship, people do things to one another. You tend to hurt the ones you love most closely.
That's true.
So, unfortunately, in every situation, both people can point to different things that the other one did that hurt them and disappointed them, made them angry, made them upset, whether there was domestic violence or adultery, or sometimes even just a bad relationship can cause people to behave in a way during divorce that really is counterproductive.
What is your advice to all the men and women who are even considering going through divorce?
I think the first thing that anyone considering going through divorce needs to do is consult with an attorney. Because
without your spouse knowing about it.
I did it with my spouse knowing about it, but if you feel that you need to go consult with an attorney without your spouse knowing about it, I think you should, because you have to remember that person is not your friend in the divorce matter. He's your adversary. So you need to know what your rights are, and you need to know what you might be up against if you decide to go through with it.
It's interesting, Carolyn. I was divorced. I had a very amicable divorce, which is very unusual. What percentage of divorces are amicable?
I actually don't have that information off the top of my head.
If you had to guess.
If I had to guess, I'd
10%.
It probably is about that, right?
It probably isn't the majority.
And because the reason why it was amicable for me, George, we didn't have children together at the time.
No property.
We didn't have property together at the time. We had only been, we had been together for 5 years. I had not acquired any real wealth at that point, neither had she. So it was a clean break. But most people have children, they have property, they have something that they built together. And it's just not that easy, is it, Carolyn?
It is definitely not that easy, especially when there are kids involved. And that really ties into the emotional aspect of it, because kids often blame themselves for their parents splitting apart. And watching your child go through, emotional turmoil even again, if you know it's the best thing for everyone involved for you and your spouse to divorce, it can be very hard on a parent.
I know what I wanted to ask you. What do you think about prenuptials? Does it make it easier?
I think that if you have significant property going into a marriage, it's certainly something you should look at.
What about wealth? If you get considerable wealth, not necessarily property.
If you have considerable, wealth, property, any assets, even if it's something that you inherited from
inheritance, that's right,
from parents, it's something that you should definitely look into if you're coming into a marriage, with property or assets or
There's
wealth.
two ways of thinking about this, though, George and Carolyn. I got to talk to you about this as an attorney. Women will say on one end, if you love me, why do you need one? But then the man will say, if you love me, why wouldn't you sign it? What is your way of thinking about this?
I tend to think the way that you said that most men think. I think most people don't really want all of the headaches and arguments that, when they really think about it, if they had to think about it, they don't want all the fighting that goes on at the end of a relationship and during the divorce process. So the more of that you can get squared away up front.
While you're calm.
While you're calm and while you're still in love and you still like each other and you're still thinking rationally, the better off you'll both be at the end.
Hey, Carolyn, thank you so much. I'm going to give them your website address you all can find on Baisden Live on Twitter, Baisden Live on Facebook. CarolynEdgar.com is posted right now. Thank you so much, especially that advice about the kids, man. That's very important stuff.